Hey guys, welcome back to Jessin Reads Romance. I'm Jessin and I'm here today with my 2020 wrap up. I wanted to kind of reflect on the year. I meant to do this video last week, but it's fine. I'm getting to it, filming a lot of videos today, but I just wanted to look back on all that's happened in 2020. A lot of things changed, a lot of things happened. I started my booktube channel only 6 months ago. It's been crazy. It's been a crazy year. So the personal goals that I set for myself during 2020 were to review every single book that I read and also read a lot more historical romances and less ARC reviews. The reason why I wanted to read less ARC reviews is because I enjoy rereading books, and I found that discovering new books was kind of cutting into my time that I would allot myself to go back and go reread a favorite couple. Those really I need those. I wanted to incorporate more historicals because I was gravitating away from them, but they were also on average the highest rated books that I would rate in 2019. So I was like, more historicals. And then of course, reviewing every single book. I almost completed that review every single book. Hopefully I'm going to catch up with all that because I definitely slacked in December. So if I review every single book that I read in December, I will have completed that challenge. I was doing good for the entire year until November, December. It's crazy. I'm going to complete that. I will. I just haven't completed it yet. Now I did start keeping track of what subgenre of romance I was reading, and I just condensed it to contemporary, historical, and paranormal. So sci-fi and all that and fantasy fell into my paranormal reads this year. I'm debating on whether or not I'm going to break it down further for 2021. But it's interesting. It's interesting. My statistics for 2020. So I read around 250 books, and I say around because I don't know the number for sure. I was using Goodreads exclusively to track my reads, it's not ideal. I find this aspect of Goodreads very annoying. If you're reading an ebook and you open up a new ebook, you can turn this off, but it doesn't help me in the long run because I forget to add books. But it'll say Mark is currently reading on Goodreads. And so if that's checked off, it automatically tells everybody this is what I'm currently reading if I open that book. But I open books as soon as I put them on my Kindle. That doesn't necessarily mean that I'm reading them at the time. So anyway, that was a hassle. But the thing is, if I finished reading it, it would mark as read on Goodreads, and I didn't know that it already had moved it to my read pile, and it had no rating and no review, and I didn't shelve it because it just kind of moved it without me physically moving it myself, and I thought that was so aggravating. And so whenever I tried to fix that, it would mark on my Goodreads challenge that I read a book twice, and I had to go on the desktop version and fiddle with that, take off that second date that it said that I read it, and it was just incredibly annoying. So I am going to be changing the way that I record my books in 2021, but that's a whole separate video on my 2021 goals and my process and what I want to accomplish. But so I use Goodreads exclusively, 250 around that ballpark. And I also didn't count rereads. So these are all new books, 250 around new books. And breaking it down by subgenre, 55% of those reads were contemporaries. And this is what I wanted to kind of mitigate. I did not want all of my reads to be contemporaries. I want a more balanced reading experience. I tried to have one for 2020, but I think it's a lot of KU reads that are suggested to me are contemporary, and that's what I end up by reading. All the unplanned books just so happen to be contemporary and from KU the majority of the time. So 25% of those are historical and 20% were paranormal / fantasy / sci-fi. And so at least historical edged out fantasy and sci-fi, but I could have definitely read more historicals. And I feel like I'm going to because I own a lot more now. So I will definitely issuing that challenge to myself in 2021. Now for the arcs, as far as the arcs go, in 2019, if there was a book that everybody else was looking forward to and I wasn't really looking forward to it, I'd request it anyway. And I did not do that in 2020. I only requested the books that I actually really wanted to read, which made it easier to keep up with all of my reviews for 2020. And so I am proud of myself for that. One of the greatest things about starting BookTube, in addition to my podcast, is getting even more recommendations. I've had so many recommendations, and I wanted to highlight some of my favorite new discoveries for authors that I found this year. And so many of these authors on my list now have books that are like all-time favorites for me. So that is amazing. It makes me so happy. So I have a list of my favorite new authors that I discovered in 2020, and these are not all of them. These are the ones that definitely came to mind. I could have scoured every single book that I read. It would have taken me a long time. But Stacey Reed, historical, loved her. Danielle Allen, I love Truth or Dare, and I can't wait to go back into her backlist. I only read one, but I really, really, really loved her writing. Emery Rose, I don't know if she writes exclusively new adult, but I definitely connected to those, and that's not often the case for new adult romance and college age romance. It's not my favorite age group to read about, but I really did like Emery Rose's writing style. TJ Klune. What more can be said than the Green Creek series? It impacted me so much, and this was a late in the year discovery. It was October. I started reading TJ Klune for the Paranormal Romance Readathon, and oh my god, mind-blowing. I love TJ Klune, the only male author on this list. Then I read Mia Sheridan this year. She has a ton of books in her backlist as well that I want to read. Archer's Voice really kind of blew me away, and I was like, why have I not been reading this author? I feel like everybody else have been suggesting Archer's Voice for a long time, and I finally got on board, and I was like, yeah, it's great. Rilsey Adams, KU Discovery, and the only books that I've read by her so far have been novella length, but they've been so good. She knows how to pace a story, especially for novellas. I find that sometimes when I'm reading novellas, I don't feel as satisfied because I feel like there needs to be more meat to the story for me to feel satisfied, but Rilsey Adams and the novellas that I read by her have been perfection, and I love them. Milla Vane, my favorite, hands down, fantasy writer that I read in 2020. Loved this new discovery. Her whole world for the A Gathering of Dragons series fascinates me, and I just can't wait to read more by Milla Vane. She's so good. Then I was lucky to discover Julie Garwood. There were so many people discovering Julie Garwood at the same time, and I definitely jumped on the bandwagon. I wanted to be a part of the conversation about The Secret. That was the first book that I read by Julie Garwood, and I was absolutely blown away. And I've read quite a few now, and I love them, and I'm very surprised because I feel like I have a lot more nitpicky things to say about historical romance written in the 80s and 90s, and I just started to delve into that era of historical romance, but I feel like Julie Garwood, like, I love her books. They were so good still to this day. I love them. And of course, Loretta Chase. I've only read Lord of Scoundrels, but I was like blown away, and I know that that book is a lot of people's favorites, but it's like I had never read a Loretta Chase, so now I need to go back into her backlist. And of course Jennifer Ashley, because The Madness of Lord Ian Mackenzie was a standout from this year. Oh, see what I'm saying? Like, what some of my favorite books from this year were historical romances. Those were all my top 3 historical romances were The Secret, Lord of Scoundrels, and The Madness of Lord Ian Mackenzie. And that's why I want to read more historical romances, because I tend to rate them higher. I tend to enjoy them more, but I don't know why they just don't land on my TBR as often as I would like. Now I want to shout out some of my favorite couples, my book boyfriends from 2020, and also my girl crushes. And I decided since I only started the BookTube channel this year, and we did do book boyfriends and girl crushes for 2019. I'm just going to state my overall master list of book boyfriends and that includes some of my 2020 discoveries. So anyway, this is the base list. This is my ultimate list of book boyfriends, complete, total, all time since I started reading romance. It's not just the 2020 list. So anyway, my favorite couples were Yvonne and Maddox from A Heart of Blood and Ashes. Perfectly balanced. The characterization was on point, and I loved it. I love them together. A lot of times I enjoy a book, but I like one character more, and the romance was good, but I always think about one character in particular. And all these couples, it's like they absolutely make the book, and I cannot think about one without thinking about the other. So Yvonne and Maddox are one of my favorite couples in romance that I read. Then of course, Ian and Beth from The Madness of Lord Ian Mackenzie. I love the way that Beth thought about Ian. She never thought he was in any way kind of like an oddity. He was like, she was fascinated with him, but not in a way that was like, oh, he's an oddball, he's a curiosity, let's see where this all will lead. Their very first meeting, the sparks are absolutely flying, and you can tell that Beth is 100% invested in Ian as a person, despite despite his oddities. Like, she just likes him for who he is, and he just so happens to have these quirks that other people label as madness, but she doesn't consider them that. And I just feel like they balance each other so well. I love them together. They're the sweetest couple. Then Ox and Joe. Ox and Joe from Wolfsong, my sweet baby angels. You see them grow up. You see them as very young children, and then you see them as adults. And I felt so fulfilled and complete by their love story. And I was truly like, these people are meant to be with each other. Even when they were very young, I was like, these guys are soulmates, and I'm obsessed with them. I'm obsessed with them. I'm obsessed with the whole Green Creek series, but Joe and Ox really kick it off for us in Wolfsong, and phenomenal. Phenomenal. I also have to include Maxim and Lennox on this list. I did not read the Kingmaker duet until this past year, and Maxim and Lennox are my favorite types of Kennedy Ryan characters. They're both so strong-willed. They're both very like dominant personalities, and I don't find that every romance that I read with like two dominant personalities really balances the romance out between these two, because it's a lot of like, I want you to bend to my will. When you have two dominant personalities like that, there's lots of conflict. I really like the conflict that was a part of this duet. I thought it was fitting, and I thought that it played out well, and I thought that it was so smart that Kennedy Ryan spent a huge chunk of the first book on their romance and it being amazingly sweet, and it establishes it before the conflict enters into the scene, and it was just so well done. And I definitely feel like these two characters are meant to be. Nobody does an alpha male hero like Kennedy Ryan without making me like feel like, ooh, he's kind of like cringe, but he's definitely not alpha mellow. I don't know. He does have like some sentimental tendencies, like when he was waiting outside of Lennox's hostel in Amsterdam. He's like reading a book, being all soft boy, and be like, I couldn't wait to see you. But overall, he's alpha. Like, whoa, he's dominant. I don't know. I don't know if I would consider him alpha mellow. He's like too alpha, and his mellow side only comes out sparingly. Even with Lennox, it's mostly alpha with her. So for book boyfriends, my original list for 2019, we only have 5 that we listed in 3 honorable mentions. So originally for 2019, my book boyfriend list was number 1, Cletus Winston from Beard Science, 2, Grip James from the Grip series by Kennedy Ryan, 3, Kern Lennart from the Kate Daniels series by Ilona Andrews, 4, Connor Mad Rogan from the Hidden Legacy series by Ilona Andrews, and 5, Reyes Farrow from the Charlie Davidson series by Dorinda Jones. My honorable mentions were Torn Grace from Torn by Karen Cole, Dimitri Belikov from the Vampire Academy series. Look, this is the only book boyfriend that has been a constant from me since high school, and I'm not knocking him off the list, or at least he wasn't knocked off the list in 2019. And then Alessandro from the Hidden Legacy series. I'd only read Sapphire Flames at this point, and yeah, so those were my book boyfriends. So this year, Juliet wanted to expand that list to top 10 book boyfriends, not just top 5. So I was happy to do that. I wasn't gonna complain. So my overall list of book boyfriends, these are the heroes that have stayed with me, have made an impression. I got some new people on this list. I got some old favorites, and also the rankings moved around a bit. So there was a promotion for my top book boyfriend. He was number 2 in 2019, and I moved him up to number 1. Grip from the Kennedy Ryan's Grip series. It's just, I love him. I would 100% marry him. This is my most like reread contemporary series ever, and yeah, Grip has moved up. Also, Mad Rogan has moved up on the list. So Mad Rogan from the Hidden Legacy series, the first 3 books in the Hidden Legacy series are about Connor, Rogan, and Nevada, and I love their love story, but Connor Mad Rogan is just definitely my favorite Ilona Andrews hero that she's ever written. I love him. Then Torn Grace has moved up on the list from Torn. I love this romance. This romance is not for everybody. Not everybody wants to read about the age gap, but the Grace brothers just get me. And I recently commented on a Karen Cole post where she said that another Grace Brothers book is in the works for 2021, and I couldn't be more excited because I just love their family. Number 4 on the list is Tom Severin from Chasing Cassandra. I really love an emotionally stunted hero, but of course it has to be done well because if the hero is resisting too hard for stupid reasons, such as I don't feel emotions or I cannot love, then it gets frustrating. But some of my favorite heroes of all time, including Anthony Bridgerton from the Bridgertons, they're like this, and I feel like Tom Severin was just executed so well, and I love him. Number 5 is a wild card. This is a wild card. This is not everybody's book boyfriend. I put Carter Mahoney from Untouchable by Sam Mariano. This is a dark romance, and Carter is a villain character. Like villain, and not like reformed villain. He doesn't get reformed in the end. He's a 100% villain, and he does some horrible things. But Sam Mariano made me love him so much, and he's my favorite dark romance hero. Number 6 is Ian McKenzie. He just topped a lot of my historical romance book boyfriends. I just connected with him so well, and I could not put him on my list. Now, Reyes Farrow, he used to be number 5, but I bumped him down to number 7 because mostly when I look back on the series, because the Charlie Davidson series is complete, the way that it all ended, and it has nothing to do with the character of Reyes, I was a little bit disappointed with the way that that series ended, so it did bump it down. But when I think about the first books in the series, I love him as a hero. He's just so, like, the son of Satan is perfection. I love him. He will do anything for Charlie, and he frequently puts himself in harm's way just to protect her. And I just love Reyes. I couldn't knock him off like the list completely because he just makes me melt. Then number 8 on the list is Dimitri Belikov. I'm not knocking him off this list. And maybe this is why I really like age gap romances, because he and Rose had an age gap romance, and also forbidden romance because it was a student-teacher relationship, more like a mentor-mentee relationship. And it was just, yeah, I love him. I cried so much in high school during a particular book. I don't want to like spoil it if people want to read this series, which it's an old series, so I cried so much when something happened with Dimitri in that series, and I'm still not over it. When I think about it, I'm like, Dimitri. So anyway, I love him, and he's not moving from this list anytime soon. Number 9 is Curran Lennart. Again, he is such an alpha. He's literally the king of all alphas in the Kate Daniels series. Well, the king of Atlanta, Pax. But he will sacrifice all for Kate, and I love that in a character. And that's why I'm always like pushing the Kate Daniels series on people, because you don't get the romance until a little bit later on. But I feel like once Kate and Curran get on each other's radar, I just love the way that Curran loves Kate. But it's very much fantasy heavy, this whole entire series is. And finally, at number 10, don't know how this happened. He was number 1 last year. Well, I do know how it happened, and I'll explain why. Is Cletus Winston. Cletus Winston is number 10 on my top book boyfriends list, where he used to be number 1. He had the farthest drop. And I think, and it's not that I don't love Beard Science anymore. It's still one of my favorite books that Penny Reed has ever written. But he has a spin-off series. The first one was Engagement and Espionage. And I read that series, and it didn't make me not love Cletus and Jennifer as a couple, or Cletus as a person. But my last impression of Cletus was him and Jennifer not having problems, but it definitely wasn't as romantic as Beard Science was. I wasn't as excited about the relationship aspects of Engagement and Espionage as I was when Beard Science came out. So I am reading Marriage and Murder, and it might bump up Cletus again in my book boyfriends list, but book boyfriends are also about longevity. They have to shine over all the other heroes, and I still love Cletus Winston, but now it's like the Cletus from Beard Science and the Cletus from Engagement and Espionage. Not that he's changed, but the arc. Like, I'm thinking about stuff that happened in Engagement and Espionage, and I was just kind of like, I wish they had more romance in Engagement and Espionage. So anyway, that's why Cletus Winston is number 10. Honorable mention right there is Ashley Cutler from Sea of Ruin. I'll just say that. Ashley Cutler, whoa. And now for the girl crushes. So my original list from 2019, my top 5 were Kate Daniels, Charlie Davidson, Jennifer Sylvester, Nevada Baylor, Vera Delane from The Opposite of You. And my honorable mentions were Evie Jenner, from The Devil in Winter, Stella Lane from The Kiss Quotient, and Sandra Fielding from Love Hacked. Now for 2020, a lot has changed because I discovered a ton of heroines that I loved in 2020. My top favorite heroine, number one, is Yvonne from A Heart of Blood and Ashes. I joke about it with Crystal all the time. Every time I'm texting about this character, her name automatically pops up in all caps because that's how much I feel for her. I love her so much. So yeah, of course, she is number one. Number two is Kate Daniels. I still love Kate Daniels. Her character is just so badass, but she's so caring. She has such a soft spot, and I love her character. It's magical. Number three is Nevada Baylor from the Hidden Legacy series, the first three. I have a lot of Alona Andrews characters on here. I just like the way that she writes women. They're so badass and also very family oriented. And I just love the way that she balances all of that. And it's just so good. Nevada Baylor, love. Number four is Bennett Sharp from A Sea of Ruin. She was such a badass lady pirate, and I'm absolutely in love with her character. She was just amazing. I was in awe of her. Then we have Jessica from Lord of Scoundrels. I absolutely loved how Dane was trying to shock her, and she never let him. She was just like, oh yes, I already knew that. It's fine. I'm unshockable. And I love the way that she gave him a run for his money because he was definitely trying to make her uncomfortable, but she was just like, no, I don't scare that easily, but thanks for trying. And it was just, I loved it. Number six is Beth from A Madness of Lord Ian Mackenzie. Again, like I said for the couple, it's just, I love the way that Beth loved Ian and accepted him and stood up for him. One of my favorite scenes was whenever she told his older brother, the Duke, just like mic dropped him. She was just like, you know what? Quit it. Like, stop treating Ian like this. He's a person, and you will let him have a break and stop using him as your human contract negotiator, whatever. Like, no. I just loved her. Next, at number seven, we have Judith from The Secret. She was just one of those bright and bubbly personalities that when she meets a bunch of grumpy, not a bunch of grumpy heroes, because obviously she only ends up with one person, but the hero and his band of warriors come to get her, and they're all kind of like grumpy. They don't like English women. They're Scottish, you know? And she disarmed them totally by just being the sweetest person ever. And she was so endearing, the way that she became a midwife once she got to Scotland and had some breakdowns because she was scared. She'd never done it before, and then she had to like leave it all at the door and just like, you know, come in and be like, I am an expert, but she wasn't. And it was just so good, and I loved her character. It just gives me all the feels. Number eight is Cassandra from Chasing Cassandra. As much as I really love badass women, sword-wielding women, lady pirate women, I also love really soft women. I like the quieter heroines. I like seeing those heroines and how they're just as important as these badass, mouthy, sassy heroines. I like both of them, and I want both of them in my romance. Cassandra was beautiful. She was charming. She was so sweet, and I love the way, like I said, these heroines who are like soft and unassuming, they have a way of like sneak attacking around the heroes, all the walls that they put up to like not let anybody else in. And they subtly just become the love of the hero's life. And they're just like, how did this happen? And it's just so good. Cassandra, I loved her character. Number nine is Maud from the Innkeeper Chronicles. Now, the majority of the books are written with the heroine Dinah. And I love Dinah as well, but Maud gets her own little spin-off book. We go on an adventure with Maud, and she was so awesome and amazing. She was so badass. She was a single mom, and I loved her character so much. She wasn't even introduced into the story until later on. We heard about her, but we didn't see her until the book right before she gets her little spin-off book, and it was just like, she made an impression. She was cool. She was another badass person. Lone Andrews writes my favorite badass chicks ever. And then at number 10, we have Lennox from the Kingmaker duet. She was such a strong character. She had such strong convictions, and Kennedy Ryan writes those just as well. She writes very alpha heroes that I love and adore. She writes such complicated heroines that make mistakes, that maybe are a little self-destructive in some ways, but I'm still rooting for them and I'm not frustrated with them. So anyway, yeah, those are my top girl crushes for 2020. It's my new master list. Let's see if any of these move or are knocked off the list in 2021. All right, guys, that's all that I have for you today. I will be doing a video pretty soon on my goals for 2021, my expectations, and I'm really excited about all that. I can't believe we're in 2021. I'm ready to be in 2021. If you like this video, give it a big thumbs up, and if you're not already subscribed to my channel, make sure that you subscribe to get notified of any future videos that I do. Thank you so much for watching, and remember, life's better with a little HEA. Bye guys.